And I'm pleased to introduce Raewyn Wise. Raewyn is a Kiwi. She's actually a fellow Kiwi living in Aussie, and her career spans 40 years in business development, project and event management, policing and private investigation, natural therapies, network marketing, and digital assets. With a lifelong interest in law, she dived down the rabbit hole during COVID, had her eyes opened, much like a lot of us here, widely, and undertook studies related to our rights and how we can extricate ourselves from the public system. A big believer in everything is happening for a reason, same here. Raewyn uses the skills and knowledge gleaned over several decades and shares this knowledge with men and women about the benefits of trusts, unincorporated associations, and unincorporated member associations so that they can step entirely out of the matrix or at least learn how to walk in the two worlds in which we find ourselves. So welcome, Raewyn, to DeFi Freedom and our presentation. Really, really pleased to have you here.
Thank you, Tony, and I'm glad to be here. I actually had to install Starlink yesterday because I've moved to a rural place in Australia, and it just seems to be a blanket of cloud above us, and I couldn't get any internet reception. So now I've got perfect internet reception, which is great. So really pleased to be here. Thank you for the introduction. And what I'll do is basically I'm going to present. I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint presentation and I'll run through it. I ask if each of you can remain muted, and if you've got questions, jot them down or pop them in the chat box for Tony and I at the end of the presentation. If I can answer them, I will. There's some things that are new to me as well, but hopefully we'll travel down that path together if we can. So I'll just do that, and I'm going to share my screen. And where is it? Where is my, trying to find my, here it is.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, and I'll put everyone tiny so that I'm not distracted by everyone, and make it into a PowerPoint.
That'll be great.
Oh, hang on, where's my, yeah, there's my controller. Okay, so thank you, everyone. So a snapshot of what we're going to run through today is some crypto security, anonymity and privacy online, blockchain, decentralized autonomous organizations or DAOs, decentralized finance, and private structures. So I'll be talking for about 40 minutes. So I hope that's going to be okay with all of you. So basically, why would you listen to me? As Tony said, I'm a Kiwi living in Australia, and my career spans 40 years in a diverse range of industries. I've had a lifelong interest in law, and I've got a strong sense of fairness and responsibility with a need to see remedy effective. Now, remedy is another word for justice that some of you may know, especially for those who are powerless to defend themselves. Now, having spent 3 years back in New Zealand, I returned to Australia in mid-2019. Not long after that, the pictures began emerging from China. Now, we know what happened next. So that's when I dived down the rabbit hole and I explored the mess that we are in. Sorry, just 1 second. I'm just getting interrupted here. And basically, it was confronting, and it was a real learning curve. And
Whoops. You've gone muted, Raewyn.
led me to the private trusts, which in turn led me to decentralized banking. And I think
You just sorry, Raewyn, you just cut out for about
oh
10 seconds and you just
okay.
disappeared.
Okay, so much for Starlink, huh?
It can happen
Okay.
with Starlink, actually. We've had this before. Occasionally it happens.
Okay, righto. So anyway, so I'll just go back a little bit. I dived down the rabbit hole and I explored the mess that we're in. And I was appalled at my own lack of attention. I really hadn't. I knew things weren't right, and they didn't feel right, but I wasn't sure what it was. So I studied law common to I, and which is very different from common law, and sovereign by design, and that led me to the trusts, which led me to decentralized banking. So as we all know, when you get to a certain age, that's how our lives flow. It's choices determine our path. For the past 4 years, I've been in the networking and Forex trading space, and this is great and highly successful until it wasn't. And so I launched into several other opportunities. Some of them were great and some failed. In fact, 2023 was an awful year for failed investments. They came one after another, 4 in a row in quick succession. Now, I believe 1 or 2 have gotten caught in the global financial disaster, but whether they'll come right is anyone's guess. Meantime, I delved into the private, law as opposed to legal, and law, L-O-R-E, that is passed down by our ancestors. And then I looked into trusts and unincorporated associations and all the benefits that go with living and working in the private realm. So I decided to set up a business called Owl Wisdom, and I now help men and women understand the benefits of trusts and unincorporated associations and how they can walk with 1 foot in each world so that they have the benefits of each. Because after all, we are entwined in a society, and extricating ourselves is not easy. Now, because I work in the private, I have a disclaimer, and when I'm dealing with you or anybody else, I'm dealing with a man or woman in your capacity as a man or woman, not as a Mr., Mrs., a counselor, a judge, a lawyer, or anything else. So I'll just read this very quickly. I, a woman, Raewyn, invite you to attend this meeting as a man or woman. No agents of government or entities are permitted, nor have any legal authority in this meeting. Recording of the meeting is not usually permitted, but Tony is recording this one because it's not my usual one based on all of the trusts and unincorporated associations. That's an add-on. If you are an agent of government, you have the option to leave the meeting now. If you choose to stay, your attendance is your consent to abide by the conditions of entry outlined here, including providing indemnity for any future actions you may take. Remaining in this meeting means you accept everything discussed is in the private realm as men and women, and that no public statutes, acts, regulations, codes, or rules apply herein. Remedy will be sought directly and personally from any woman or man contravening the terms of this agreement. Information shared with you is learned knowledge and is not legal nor financial advice. I simply share it for your benefit. Decisions made as a result of receiving this information are at your discretion and your responsibility. So all in all, that sounds a little bit heavy, but it's not really. It's just you need to know where I come from. I work entirely in the private when I'm working. So Web 1, Web 2, and Web 3. When I first heard the terms Web 1, 2, and 3, I was very confused. I thought, what the heck? And the woman who introduced it to me spoke as though it was a big secret and that there was no way I would understand it. But it turns out to be quite simple. She wasn't explaining it simply. Web 1 was the advent of the internet. Remember back when we first put up a website, a static one with no interactivity? It looked like an information site. And that's exactly what it was, similar to an encyclopedia page up on the internet. So Web 2 came along where social media was introduced, and suddenly we've got a web collecting all our info. And that information we were willingly but unknowingly giving away. The internet became interactive, and we could send messages and emails. We could leave comments on websites. Now we're moving into Web 3 now, and it's the introduction of artificial intelligence and decentralization. Web 2 was a centralized one. That was what the web was. Everything was going to a central point. So now we're into artificial intelligence and decentralization. And this has many positives and a few negatives. I'm not a big proponent of AI. I think it's going to make us lazy, but it does give us some amazing tools. And I do like the decentralization of services and the reintroduction of some forms of privacy for us. As we know, that's a bit lacking these days. So security online. Some simple things to remember, and we'll just run over this first because I know you're all online, but I'm not exactly sure of who knows what. Logging in and out. When you've been on a website, particularly if it's a banking or crypto website, ensure you log out or sign out every time. Don't just close your browser down because it's leaving it floating out there. And if somebody's out there trying to take advantage, then it's open and it's available. 2FAs, pins and passwords. Now, these can be the bane of our life because we have to remember them all. and it can be time consuming to have to log into our websites that we use them for, but they are good layers of protection. And I'll tell you why. I had a Wirex account. It's one of the first crypto accounts I had, and I had $500 sitting in it. And one morning I woke up to ping, 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 and I thought, what's pinging my phone this morning? Because nothing was happening. I was living in the rainforest actually, and there wasn't a lot happening at all. And it was all these transfers from Wirex that were being declined. And I thought, what the heck? I'm not online. And I went on and I saw that I'd been hacked and I'd lost the $500 US. And the reason that that had happened is that I didn't have a 2FA on the account. So I made the complaint to them, and Wirex were really great, and I recovered about $400 of it, which was good because it was my own fault and it was a learning curve, an expensive one, but a learning curve. So I really encourage you to use all the layers of security that you can. Now, storing crypto. Some of you will be aware of what these are, soft and hard wallets. So soft wallets are when you're online and you have an account with an online crypto exchange or wallet. And so that's called a soft, or sometimes called a warm wallet. Okay. And they are the ones that you really must have that security on. It's a must. It's not a maybe. Now, hard wallets, of course, are the Trezors and the Ledgers. They are USB type devices that the only time that anyone can see, including ourselves, what we've got in our account is when we plug it in. And of course, we have pins and passwords for that as well, which is really great. And when we take it, unplug it from the computer, everything's offline again. Now, the other thing that's become more usual now are private keys. Now, you may think, what the heck is a private key? But a private key for an online account will give you security. A private key is usually between 12 and 24 words, and they can be words of 4 letters, or they might be up to 6 or 8 letters, and they have to be input when you're logging in a certain order. And if you've got the order wrong or you spell it wrong, you're blocked. And you can have a few times to try and log in, and then it's all over Red Rover and you've got to go through support. So they're a really great step forward for the online wallets that you have. Where to store passwords? We're all different. We all prefer different things. But one thing I will admit here, and well, not admit, but one thing I will tell you here is if you're using a free app to store your passwords, you are the product. Not the password storage app. You are the product, and nothing is secure. Okay, so you can store them online. There are apps you can buy to do that. You can store them offline or in the cloud. I don't trust the cloud as far as I can throw it, but I do use it for my photos. Now, offline, of course, is the good old-fashioned way, and that's what I actually personally do. I have a book, what we used to call them address books in the old days of writing down all the phone numbers when we were still on landlines, and it's A to Z, and it's just got everything in there that I need to know, because it's quite full, that A to Z book, and it's very confusing when you've got multiple sites that you have to log into, and they have multiple requirements for your passwords. So my message there is store them safely. Just store them wherever it suits you safely. Now, one thing I found regularly, and I'll let you know, I was a member of CashFX, or I still am a member of CashFX actually, and I built a team of around 800 people. So it was a good experience for me. Some of my team would ask, they'd say, I can't log into CashFX, what's wrong? But they weren't logging into the right address. They weren't logging into, I think it was cfxgroup.com or something was the first one. And it's really simple to save the correct address on the top of your browser. All you do is you highlight it and then you drag it onto your top menu, so that when you go to log in, you're always logging into the safe website. Because on some of those websites like that platform, if you'd logged into a scam site and you'd logged in using your user ID and your password, and then you'd got in, they've got your details, especially if you didn't have your 2FA turned on. And what happens then? We know what happens then. So clearing the cache regularly will get rid of any of those floating websites that might be there, or any errors you've made, or sometimes just clear it so that you can start afresh again. and that's found under top right-hand corner of your browser, and it's either 3 dots or 3 lines usually, and you click on it, you go into history, and that's where you find it. You can clear your cache. Oh, so that's part of that one. And transferring crypto funds. Now, I don't know whether anyone here has ever used airdrops. I haven't, and I've always been adverse to them. And it comes with a warning for me. So when you're transferring crypto funds and you've got your destination address, do you always check that the first 4 or 5 letters and the first or digits and the last 4 or 5 are correct? Because you need to be doing that. And that you're on the correct network. For instance, if you're moving USDT and it can go on BSC, which is the Binance Smart Chain, or it could be on, which is BEP actually, or it could be on, I'm trying to think of the others. Anyway, there's 3 of them it can go on. Yes,
Ethereum, Tron.
yes,
Yep.
yes, that's it, Tron and Ethereum. So there's 3 or 4 there. And if your receiving address only receives one of those and you use the wrong network to send it, your funds and crypto is going to be stuck. And believe me, it's no fun unsticking it. I've done this and it's very frustrating, and it's something you've got to go through all the steps of learning again. You can retrieve it, but it's timely and it's very frustrating. And at first your heart's in your mouth because you think, oh my Lord, I've lost my funds. So always check that. Now I'll hark back to the airdrop now. I had a friend recently call me, and she had quant coins, which I believe are going, according to the QFS data, is going to be one of their coins. And she wanted to move it off wherever it was on a online website to her Trezor. And she said, she just checked in with me and she said, I've got my Trezor address. And I said, you're correct, it's the correct destination address. You've checked, your first 4 or 5, your last 4 or 5 digits. She said, yes, I have. She said, I'm using airdrop. And I said, oh. I said, I've never used airdrop. And I said, I don't have a lot of faith in it. She said, everybody's using airdrop. I'm going to send it. So she did. She sent it, and she sent it successfully. It was $2,000. She had about $50,000 sitting in her Trezor. And within 2 minutes of the money landing, her Trezor was cleaned out. So just be very wary. Make sure you know what you're using, why you're using it, who's sent you any destination addresses or airdrops. I've never had anything to do with airdrops. I don't know how they operate, but they sound sus to me.
That's interesting, Raewyn, because airdrop, I always saw airdrops in a different context, and that's when projects will send you free money. They airdrop free tokens into your wallet. But what
Yes,
you're talking about is like what you're using like a you can airdrop photos from, say, my phone to the
yes.
computer. Are you talking about using it that way?
Well, similar. I honestly don't know. I have done photos from my sister's phone to mine when we're both in the same room, and yes, that's gone fine. But I've always been a bit adverse to using it for money. And yeah, and yes, it seemed to me that that sites that wanted to give you away stuff were always using airdrop, and I guess that's why I was a bit adverse to it, because I don't believe that you get something for nothing.
Yeah,
Nice.
I
Yep.
totally agree. You should never send crypto any other way other than copying and pasting with the copy squares. That's the way to do it, is just to copy and paste,
Yeah,
using
I
the
agree.
copy squares. And when it comes to airdrops, what you do have to be careful if there's projects out there saying, we just click on here, just connect your wallet, and we'll drop you some free tokens.
Yeah.
And I did that once, and guess what? The tokens I had in that wallet disappeared in as quick as a flash.
Yeah,
Um,
and
people,
that's exactly why I don't trust them.
yeah. So we do not, unless you absolutely know that project, and don't ever click on unsolicited emails saying,
Mm,
here, click on this to connect your wallet.
yeah,
It's only if you're absolutely sure.
absolutely.
So
I
I
agree.
want to add that as well.
Okay, no, thank you for that. Okay, so moving on to the next thing is Cyberzin. Now, Cyberzin you will probably never have heard of before. It is a software, it is a proprietary software written by a very intelligent programmer who's more than a programmer. During COVID, he was being flown all around the world to fix the programming problems for banks. So he's an Australian, really nice guy by the name of Kydrick. Now, he's written this software which provides a native digital identity for cyberspace interactions. They call it the SELF, SELF. And service providers and users can leverage the digital identity framework to seal, which means kind of like copywriting, authored content as its own. So public content in cyberspace without a seal is anonymous and assumed fictitious. So this software is all about providing you with anonymity, sorry, I hate that word, and privacy. So it provides a platform to choose your own data sovereignty adventure. And by default, your data exists on your computer and phone, and Cyberzin calls them shells, but they cannot access your data. Absolutely no exceptions. So again, really important why you would know your passwords and have them in a safe place. Now, Cyberzin is anonymous first. While you have the digital self in cyberspace, all the interactions with the communities there are anonymous, and they cannot do any tracing and tracking. So only yourself, which is your identity, knows which anonymous identity links to you in any of their communities. Really quite brilliant, that. And
Wow.
the last one, Cyberzin links you directly to cyberspace. Anonymity and digital identity are both natural within the cyberspace, and the AI bots are identifiable as such. So it's very clever hardware and software. The hardware itself is a MetaBox computer, which is built in Australia. It's got all the components that are built here, and it only weighs 800 grams, so it's really lightweight. It has military protection on it, so it's very, very secure. Now I love it. I have one. They cost just under it would be around $3,000 for Kiwis because of the difference in price, but there are pros and cons. So what I love about it is that you can be anonymous and you can maintain privacy in cyberspace. However, it's not so fabulous if you want to use most of the apps that you use, especially free ones. They may or may not operate on the system. For instance, even when I set up Our Wisdom last year, and I had a Microsoft Office address, which is the first time I've used Microsoft ever, I think, and Cyberzin will not open my Microsoft account on there, because in the back of Microsoft, they're going, sneaky, sneaky, we want to see what all your stuff is. And Cyberzin just blocks it. And so there's something, I had to go out and buy a cheaper, plain old laptop because my current laptop was dying, and that one the new one wouldn't allow me to do some things. So it's great in some ways and not so great in another, but it just depends on what you're doing and how you want to do it. Oh, and I just go back, cyberzin.art, cyvizien.art, and you can learn all about it.
Cool.
So he is an Aussie who's doing great work. Now, blockchain. Simply put, a blockchain is a special kind of database, and according to Oxford Dictionary, a ledger is a book or other collection of financial accounts of a particular type. Now, it can be computer file that records transactions, and as we would know, ledgers go back to the times of scrolls. They're as old as the writing and money. Now, imagine a whole suite of incorruptible digital ledgers of economic transactions that can be programmed to record and track not only financial transactions, but also virtually everything of value. Now, remember what I'm saying there. Blockchain can secure everything on it, because I'm going to tell you something else further in this. And the blockchain can track things like medical records, land titles, and even voting. It's a shared, distributed, and immutable ledger that records the history of transactions, starting with transaction number 1. It establishes trust, accountability, and transparency, because each block has 3 elements. The first one is data, and the type of data depends on what the blockchain is being used for. For example, Bitcoin, a block starter contains details about the transaction, which includes the sender, the receiver, the number of coins, and so on. And then there's the hash code. And sometimes if you've ever been trying to identify where a payment's gone to or come from, you will have been asked for a hash code. And it's not the type you can smoke. It's a hash in blockchain is something like a fingerprint or signature. It identifies that block and all of its content, and it is always unique. And the hash of the previous block, that piece is precisely what makes a blockchain, because each block carries the information of the previous block, and the blockchain becomes very secure. So how does a blockchain secure itself? Well, interfering with a block on the blockchain is almost impossible. The first way a blockchain secures itself is with the hashtag. And if anybody tampers with a block, once it's been put up there on the blockchain, it causes the hash of the block to change. And that change makes the following block, which originally pointed to the first block's hash, invalid. So in fact, changing a single block makes all the following blocks invalid. So it's really easy on a blockchain to go back to see, you can trace back to see which block of the blockchain has actually been corrupted. So on top of the hashes, there's proof of work and peer-to-peer distribution. Now, proof of work is the mechanism that slows down the creation of blocks. And Bitcoin's a good example because it's slow. In Bitcoin's case, it takes 10 minutes to calculate the required proof of work and add a new block to the chain. This timeline makes tampering with a block super difficult, because if you interfere with the one block, you've got to interfere with all the following blocks. And a blockchain like Bitcoin contains hundreds of thousands of blocks. So successfully manipulating it might take you 10 years. So a third way that the blockchains secure themselves is by being distributed. And that's where they come and they use peer-to-peer network. So in public blockchains like Bitcoin, everyone's allowed to join, and each member is called a validator or a node. Now, you'll be hearing a lot of nodes coming to the fore now. It's something that's kind of newly jumped on. So when someone joins the network, they get the full copy of the blockchain. And this way, the node can verify that everything is still in order. So this is what actually happens. The new block is sent to everyone in the network, and each node then verifies that block and makes sure it hasn't been tampered with. And if everything checks out, each node adds the new block to their blockchain. So it's like a chain fence. You're adding a new one on, and does it fit, and is it the right style, and is it the right color or whatever? So it doesn't get accepted until it meets all the criteria. And it creates that consensus that it's valid or not valid. So to successfully mess with a block on the blockchain, you'd need to tamper with all the blocks, redo the proof of work for each block, and take control of the peer-to-peer network. Now, with the layer 1 blockchains that are coming out now, they are really fast. In comparison, the Bitcoin blockchain is extremely slow. And so the new blockchains will be doing thousands and thousands of transactions and new blocks every minute. So you can see that by having some data in there, it's actually more secure probably than anything you've ever had before. So I'll move straight into, this is the first part of decentralized finance, but DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. It's an emerging form of a legal structure that has no central governing body and whose members share the common goal to act in the best interest of the entity. So it's popularized through cryptocurrency enthusiasts, and the DAOs are used to make decisions in a bottom-up management approach. So what that means is that there's no central CEO or board of directors or even a teller at the bank who's governing what you can do. So what's their purpose? One of the major features is that it is decentralized, which means that it's not controlled by a government or central bank, but it's divided among a variety of computers and networks and nodes. And so again, it's not central. There's not one person who's dealing with it. And if you've actually got a block in the blockchain, which is included in a DAO, then you can understand that nobody can come in and alter that block. So there's no tampering. There's no human intervention there. So how do they work? They rely heavily on smart contracts. Now, what's a smart contract? Smart contract is simply some programming, and it's a written set of instructions. And decentralized applications in the finance sector, in the DeFi sector, they use DApps, which are based on smart contracts. So if that, then this, and if that, then the other. And they're all done in the application, which is on the computer, and there is no human intervention. And I'll talk about a financial solution that is decentralized that works just like that shortly. So benefits of them, the decentralization speaks for itself. So there's no central authority. Participation, individuals within an entity may feel more empowered, that they have some sort of say in what's going on and how it's happening. And that would be really good for in the voting system, wouldn't it? But no, they have other sorts of computers for voting. Participation. Individuals can feel like they're part of a community. And I think that's really important, particularly as we move more into computers and we have less contact with people in general. Well, I certainly do. I don't know about you guys, but I do. And the publicity that goes with this means that when members vote in a certain way, it's publicly viewable. So they can't say, oh, well, I think this, when they actually think that, because their vote towards something is recorded and it's publicly viewable. So there's no trying to do the wrong thing by your group. Now, the community concept, again, it's about people coming together, and I like that. I think we're forming communities, especially in the last few years. We've begun to find our tribes. So that's my understanding of a DAO, a DAO, and one of the businesses that I'm involved in is actually exploring and sending, moving into this field as well. So, crypto. Now, we all know, where's it headed? What's the future hold? So I was lucky enough to be invited to Dubai last October, and I sat in a meeting with the leading global blockchain experts, programmers, and crypto experts. I also sat in the room with some of the highest paid network marketers in the world. Amazing people. At that meeting, they told us that everything would be moving onto the blockchain in the next few years. Everything. Now, that was a huge statement, and it took time to sink in for me because I wondered whether they were telling me the truth, quite frankly. And I sat back and I thought of all the things that are happening in the world right now. And you know what? I think they're right. We're headed to a digital currency, whether we want it or not, and learning how to manage it, learning about decentralized digital currency so we do not get trapped in the centralized system is vital if we want any sort of freedom in our future. So some groups have said that we'll have around 10 digital crypto coins in circulation after the crash and the change to another currency. So not all crypto will stay by any means, because there's over 3,000 alternate coins, and it's ridiculous to think that they will all hold value. So let's look at one that is holding value at the moment, and that's Bitcoin. As of this morning, it was just over 70,000 US dollars, which must be around about 100 for Australia and New Zealand. And where's it going? And I'd just like to ask you a couple of questions about that. I did write down the questions and now I've lost them. Okay, but basically my questions, sorry, I've just misplaced them. My questions were, do you feel that the Bitcoin market is being manipulated? In the last few weeks, we've heard that the big players like BlackRock, Vanguard, JP Morgan, Zuckerberg have been selling assets so that they could put it into crypto. They're manipulating the market. Now, some of my research has shown, or been what I've found, is a suggestion that that's not really happening at all. The suggestion is that they're all broke, or almost broke, all those big players, and the crash is imminent. This global crash is imminent, and this is just smoke and mirrors to make it look like they've lost all the money. So my message here is be very, very careful with, if you're in Bitcoin at the moment, be very, very careful. Please cash out at the top. I don't know where the top is, but please cash out at it. So what is crypto backed by? Bitcoin's backed by nothing. We know this. Most altcoins are backed by projects. And right now, those that are in the AI space are going nuts. So that's something to be looking at. But again, being very, very careful. Where is crypto headed in the future? Obviously, I think that we're going to have some coins which become very valuable and some which just disappear altogether. Okay, hodling. Now, I've known lots of people who've been hodling for years. Their portfolios were remarkable. And in the past 18 months, some have crashed just as remarkably. I think the important thing to remember when hodling is to watch the market. And I would suggest every day. It was a financial investment, right? It took real money to buy that crypto. So please don't ignore it. You must understand what the market's doing. You must understand whether there's a need to pull out of that market, because and I'm not saying panic, but I am saying ignorance may not be bliss right now, long term. Now, trading for yourself or on platforms, as I mentioned one platform earlier, which was very kind to me. And however, that was not the same for everyone. There were people who came in later than me. And I wasn't a proponent about, the people who get in first make the most money, not by any stretch of the imagination. But they came in later than me. And then, as anybody on this call knows, CFX ran into payment problems. Others put in far more than they could afford to lose. And that's something I strenuously advocate against. So if you're on any of those platforms and you've got money in there, I'd be watching them very carefully right now. Now, two of the three or four platforms that I was in and were kind to me, they've run into strife with the Securities and Equities Commission in the USA. And I think that's because they got successful and they got really large. And they were helping us, the little people, the underdog, actually make money. And of course, that's not allowed in the world that we know that we now live in. So whether those that are stuck with the SEC work through it, I don't know. I'm hopeful, but I'm certainly not holding my breath. I'm very, if any of you are in CashFX, I'll add that my sister, who was my sponsor into it, became a director, and she became one of the people in the phase 2 testing, and it is still operational. So I would suggest that if CFX had fallen over altogether, that would be closed. So I think there's a smidgen of light at the end of that tunnel yet. So I guess the message here is just be very discerning, complete your due diligence, be a pain in the backside, ask lots of questions. I had been being approached until very recently, nearly daily, with people wanting me to go onto their platforms, promising me that they were paying out. And I'm afraid I've just been burnt too much in the past year to go down that track. So
Same here, Raewyn.
yeah, there's been a few that looked really good but weren't. But actually right now today, I'm not actually encouraging anyone to enter into any trading online platforms. My belief from the information I've been gathering is that the stock markets are going to fail big time. And people always said, well, the stock market does not affect Forex, but it's going to. When the people in the rich people in the stock market lose all their money and their wealth, the only other place they'll probably have it is in the Forex markets. And they're going to be pulling it out to live on, not to trade with. And I think when that crash happens, that the whole caboodle is going to look very different. And so what about if you're trading for yourself? I've done this and I was quite good at it. I loved the buzz. It was an emotional roller coaster for me, and it meant getting up in the middle of the night, which it would mean for you in New Zealand as well, because London and New York are the main centers, and that's where you make your money. Now, as a trader, you need to be emotionless, and I take my hat off to anyone who can do that. I salute you, because it is such a skill. But even if you're trading for yourself, I'd be wary. I'd be looking at how much money's in those broker accounts, because broker accounts are not necessarily insured. Some of them might be, but not all of them. Now, crypto is accepted internationally. It was very interesting. While I was in Dubai last October, I learned that crypto is used there to buy cars and houses to pay for meals in restaurants. It was quite amazing, really. It was a real eye-opener. And there are countries around the world introducing crypto. You may be aware that El Salvador has Bitcoin as well as their national currency. Now, they did that specifically because they have a large citizenship that goes to the USA to earn money and send it back to their families. And what they were finding was that Western Union, who was the most reliable sender, was taking up to 30 and 40% in fees. And so their family, these people would move from poverty to make something for themselves and to then send money back to help their families. And they were just being penalized. And it just shows the horrible greed that's out there. There was no need for that. So anyway, it's becoming a trend. And the golden question will be, which cryptos will be selected as true currencies? So are we going to stay with sinking centralized, or are we going to look at booming blockchain? Now, this is taken from, well, this is a global stat here. 38% of the population have trouble with their bank blocking transactions or not allowing cash withdrawals. And if it hasn't happened to you yet, you just look forward to it, because it's going to happen. I had 3 banks do it to me on 3 occasions, and they blocked transactions. The first time it happened, I was merely trying to move $1,000 into a trading platform, and they wouldn't do it. And I argued with them for over 2 days, and they cited anti-money laundering and terrorism and all this bullshit. And when I contacted ASIC about that and AAAC, or whatever it's called here in Australia, they were, oh, it's nothing to do with us. That's the bank's policies. So I went back to the bank and I said, you either move that $1,000 or I'm withdrawing the 20 that's in that account. And they said, well, I'm sorry, we can't help you. So I withdrew the 20. But this is what I'm about to quote is from National Australia Bank here in Australia. But I did look at ANZ New Zealand and BNZ New Zealand, and they have very similar things. Now, the clauses here, Clause 13A, is there as a NAB discretion to delay, block, freeze, or refuse transactions, a service, or return funds, and when they may be liable, and is replaced with 13A1. Without limiting any other rights or discretion which NAB may have, you agree, you have no choice, you may agree, that NAB may, A, delay, block, freeze, or refuse to make or receive or credit any payment or payments or other transactions using the services detailed in this booklet. This includes any electronic payments or payments at a NAB branch or agency, and any payments to or from your account instructed by a cardholder or any other person authorized by you. And B, suspend or end access to or use of your account, including any linked cards, PINs, password, device, or through any service provided for in this booklet. This is black and white. It was their updated terms and conditions last November. They are setting up to control our money through the social credit system. Now, over on the right-hand side, 13A, now I just need to move the little doodacky that's there so I can read it. You agree that you will provide, you agree, again, no choice, that you will, not you may, provide any information that NAB reasonably requests connected with the account in any relevant transactions. NAB may continue any action under Clause 13A1 until it receives a satisfactory response. You acknowledge that if NAB is not satisfied with your responses, or you fail to respond in a timely manner, then NAB may take this into account when deciding whether or not to close your account. So again, they are lining up and making it so that they can do whatever the hell they want. Be very careful with your money in the bank. So whose money is it anyway when it's in the bank? When you first opened your bank account, did you read all the terms and conditions? It's usually small print, usually 10 to up to 100 pages. That NAB booklet, when I went online recently, their terms and conditions are 97 pages. None of us read it. And we should have, because there's a clause in there that states that when we put the money into the bank account, we are giving it to the bank. We no longer own our money, so to speak. So how do you feel about having been coerced into thinking that the bank, money in the bank was safer, and that it would be there when we needed it, and that under the mattress was no longer safe. Right now, putting your money under the mattress is looking a little bit safer, although I'd suggest gold and silver might be more safe again. So just be aware that we did sign contracts that gave our money away. Who's heard of the bank bail-in? In New Zealand, it's called Open Bank Resolution, and it was introduced by the Reserve Bank in 2013. So that was 10 years ago. Australia has one too. It's got a big long name, which I won't go into. But basically what this does, it essentially gives banks the power to take their customers' funds instantly and without notice and transfer them into shares in the bank to prop it up in the event of a banking failure. Note that they can do this with or without notice to you, and they can do it legally. And we thought that the government ministers were supposed to have our best interests at heart. They obviously don't, do they? So how do you feel about your hard-earned cash being snaffled overnight by the same puppets of the incompetent administrations who are causing the crash? This is all planned. It's frustrating, and we should all be cranky. And even if you're happy with it to be transferred into shares in the bank, what value do you think that those shares are going to have? And if you wanted to sell them, who do you think is going to buy shares in a failed bank? A big conglomerate that could not manage the financial affairs. What about the retirement, a holiday, house renos, kids going to uni, a new car, anything? Yeah. Be very careful about what's happening in the world, people. So one of the things and one of the reasons why people have left money in the banks is because they don't trust digital, because they don't understand digital. But hopefully some of the things I've told you in this presentation, you might be a little bit more prone to looking at some digital things. Now, there's 1.7 billion people globally are unbanked. So mostly, of course, they're going to be in South America, South Africa, parts of Asia. They simply can't go to the local shopping area and walk into a bank. But what they do have are mobiles, and they do have internet reception. Now, this is what's happened in El Salvador. It actually freed up the people to actually receive nearly 100% of what was being sent to them by using Bitcoin as their transfer medium. Now, I'm not saying Bitcoin's going to be around in the future for them, but there will be some other system, no doubt. So it's changing people's lives. Digital currency in these underdeveloped or developing or third world countries is actually raising the standard of living. So there's good stuff coming out of this. However, we've thought about CBDCs and central bank digital coins, and we think about the centralized banking system and the social system, and we don't like them. And that's why I'm talking decentralized to you. We need to understand the difference between the centralized and the decentralized. So if you have got that money in the bank and you're thinking, well, what the heck do I do with it? Because I'm not too sure about the decentralized. Look at options for diversification. The precious metals, gold, silver, palladium, are all up quite high at the moment. Antiques, jewelry. Jewelry is a good way if you've got limited funds to buy gold and silver and other precious gems and jewels and things. There's lots of things you can do to diversify. But what I want to do is come back lastly to digital and just have a look at a solution that I found, and I became involved with this. So this is a DeFi, decentralized financial solution, and it acts as a bank and it acts as a crypto platform. It has both. It's a decentralized app that sits on a very fast blockchain. It's about to be launched in the next month or two. Now, it has the ability to receive your salary through the banking system. You can make instant payments, so instant. They don't take 3 days to get there or 3 hours. They're person to person. There will be both physical and virtual debit cards, and you can load that with fiat, and you can swap it into crypto, and you can use it around the world where it automatically exchanges to your currency. So say I deposited or I transferred some crypto across into this D app, and I didn't have any AUD in there, but I went out to a local restaurant, I could still use this card because it's going to automatically transfer it into AUD in the background. So it's really great. Now it's SWIFT and SEPA compliant. Those of us who've been involved in any international transfers know that SWIFT and SEPA are the two systems that are used internationally for banking transfers. Again, it's worldwide. It's compliant with both banking and crypto. It's going through its final compliance checks with banking at the moment. And there will be multiple crypto and wallets, so you can hold multiple coins or currencies in there. And I must stress it's on the blockchain, it's decentralized. So important points. Oh, it also has private key for the crypto. So you don't have a private key for the banking, you have your normal passwords and things, but with the crypto side, it has the private key. And as I mentioned earlier, that's really important with online. So unlike Wirex or crypto.com or cryptopay.com, these are not anonymous, they're not private, and your account can be closed at any time. So this one can't. Because it's a D app, it's written with smart contracts, and they are if this, then that, and no one can go in there and alter it. And if you're into affiliate marketing, there is an opportunity to earn a passive income or become a co-owner or revenue shareholder. And it's a set and forget. You buy an NFT, which is a non-fungible token, which represents a value that you as a co-owner have in the application, and you can simply monitor progress. You don't have to do network marketing if that's not your thing, but there's an opportunity there to earn from the fees that will be charged on the card. So, you know, if any of us had the opportunity to earn from the fees charged on our Visa or MasterCards, I'm sure we would have put our hands up. So basically, that's it on decentralized finance and centralized finance. And what I will finish off on is where I work currently now. And this is my own business. It's Owl Wisdom, and it's all about escaping the matrix. So what are trusts, unincorporated associations, and unincorporated member associations? They are all a relationship between two people. They are not a business. They've got a specific purpose. A trust might be a family accumulator where you want to preserve and protect your family assets. Or an unincorporated members association might be a group of like-minded people who come together for a common cause and they want to take on a humanitarian project. Now that's usually in health and welfare, health and well-being, or it might be in some of the primary industries like aquaculture and permaculture, which are coming ahead now. Now an asset or property must be placed in trust, and so that could simply be $100 to get it going, or it might be, you know, the family jewels, and it may or may not have beneficiaries. Now trusts have beneficiaries, unincorporated associations and member associations don't. However, all three of them are allowed to pay people a bona fide compensation for the activity that they undertake on behalf of that entity. So that's just a very brief one there. Why would you have it? As I mentioned before, protect and preserve assets and property. I don't know about you guys, but I was married and divorced, and then I was engaged and widowed, and then I was engaged and separated. Currently single. Now, had I known about trusts and being able to protect my assets in this way 30 years ago, I'd be in a very different position. So divorce in Australia is 1 out of 2. 50%, and in New Zealand it's probably not far behind. So anybody who's been divorced and looking at getting into another relationship, this is a way of protecting what you have, because constantly dividing things does not help you when you get to my age. Now you can minimize statutory responsibilities. If you have a business, say you're a builder, and you must have a builder's license, and you've got to have an ABN so that you can buy your supplies so that you can build, and you've got workers who you've got to pay workers' compensation payments for and all that sort of thing. You have a statutory obligation. So my suggestion would be that you set up a trust that sits in the public so that you can still hold those statutory licenses and things. However, when it comes to tax time, you would pay out the beneficiary of the trust, which would be an unincorporated association sitting over in the private, prior to finalizing your tax return. So any excess profit can be moved lawfully across into the private, minimizing your business tax. So minimizing statutory responsibilities is something that all of my clients like to do. And succession planning, that's if you've built up a a lot of assets or a successful business, and you're not sure whether your heirs are going to be up to the job of taking over trusteeship, or whether they even want to, or whether they're old enough to, or you may have a child with disabilities who you want to provide for. So you can do succession plans in there. And benefits are that you can maintain privacy. With a trust, when you go to the bank to open a trust, they will require everything plus what you had for breakfast, including the names of your beneficiaries, which is why I suggest trusts that sit in the public with a beneficiary that's over in the private, that's an unincorporated association, because the bank still will not know exactly who the end beneficiary or the person who's profiting from that is, who receives the equitable benefit is. You can manage personal risk in a divorce and litigation, as I mentioned a moment ago. You can reduce tax. You can avoid lengthy probate. Now, if you have a successful business and you pass away unexpectedly, and you don't have someone who's ready and able, and you've planned to succeed you and step in, your business can falter. Now, if any of you have had to deal with probate for a family member who has passed away, you'll know that it can take up to 6 months. It's expensive. And when you're grieving, it's horrible. I went through it myself, and it's just horrible. And I don't suggest anybody put themselves through that. Please protect yourself. And of course, preserve generational wealth. If you've got children or grandchildren who you think are just going to fritter your hard earnings away, you can write protective clauses into a trust on how the money is to be divided and utilized and how often they can get it. So that's where I work these days. I'm really enjoying it because it's helping people in a whole range of ways. And I could talk for an hour on that alone, but I'm going to leave it there because that was just an add-on for today. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing, and I thank you all for remaining here, and I look forward to answering your questions if you have any.
It was really great, Raewyn. Thank you so much. I just got a couple of, or was going to add a bit to some of the couple of things you said. When you said crypto's not backed by anything, but why could it be? People might ask, well, why would people want to, is it going to hold its value? And I always say that they must have a utility use case. They must be used in the real world. But they always say, we say the value's in the protocol. The protocol can serve, or it can enslave. And
Yes.
so we've got to look at the use case, and we've got to look at the specter of the falling dollar and the falling system.
Yeah.
Sort of, you could say is some of the cryptos are going to be a lot better option than what's happening in the fiat.
Absolutely. It's knowing which cryptos though, isn't it? That's the big question. And yes, I totally agree with what you've said. It's whether project based and they have some asset that's in there, or some project or some way of sustaining themselves. Yes, they're a good bet. But things
And
don't. Yeah.
that's right. Exactly. So I agree with you. A lot are going to go. But what we look at is we look at also that a lot of cryptocurrency is a bit of a misnomer, because the true currency in its pristine form doesn't apply to all. I mean, global payments only are going to be a select few. Most cryptos are crypto digital assets, and the token or the crypto is like a digital share. So that's how I like to see it. So it's like a startup business that you're investing in, and by doing certain due diligence, you can see whether it's going on the right track or not. And so that's where the risk lies, but it's also where the reward lies.
Absolutely. I think just to add to that too, the difference between a crypto coin and a token, from my understanding, is a coin is when it's a native coin on a layer one blockchain, which is used for all of the transactions on that blockchain. And there are only 135 of those worldwide, whereas there's 3,000 coins or tokens. The rest are tokens. If they don't have their own native ecosystem, they're a token as opposed to a coin.
That's
So,
right. And there's actually 20,000 of them now.
oh my Lord. Okay, I'm out of date.
And also, I have to ask with when you brought up that DeFi project, is that Trustify? Is that the bankless bank Trustify?
No, no, it's not Trustify. It's
Oh,
Flip Me. Flip Me. No, I looked at Trustify and I chose not to go with that one.
okay,
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Okay, very
So
cool.
there were a range of reasons for that decision. Yeah, but what I found, what I have to say, what I found out when I went to Dubai in October, which was a blessing, and very exciting. It's changed my attitude toward a lot of digital things, a lot of blockchains and things like that. So
Yep. So you're obviously you're on the Ultron.
I'm in Ultron Foundation, yes, and that's the ULX coin, and I'm also a co-owner in two of the decentralized apps that sit on that blockchain. Yeah.
Oh, very good. Awesome.
I do think though that these guys some of the people who are in that room, one gentleman, for instance, and sorry, I know we're probably over time now. One of those gentlemen is what's called a futurist. And at 12 years old, he had his own business, which was earning a six-figure income. At 13, he sold it for seven figures. He was brought up in a small town near an Amish community in the States. And then he went into computing, and he eventually, when Bitcoin was around about $150 a coin, he invested heavily in Bitcoin, and he's a billionaire. And you wouldn't know it. He's right. He's just like you and I. He's just a normal, lovely, lovely man with the best aura and best energy that you've ever felt. And
Cool.
he's a futurist, and he's one of the people that spoke to us, and he basically said everything will be going on to blockchain. Everything will be digital. Now, look, I used to be a cash is king girl, like we all want to keep cash. And I think there will be some forms of cash or some forms of currency still. But when they said everything's going onto the blockchain, I thought about that, and yeah, it's sort of like the NFTs. And I didn't understand non-fungible tokens when they first came out. I thought, oh, what a load of crock! You've got all these virtual things on the internet or on the blockchain, and what does it mean? But now I understand that those NFTs will represent real items.
I totally agree with you 100% in that. My own research tells me everything's going on the blockchain. They tokenization
Yeah.
of, and not just assets, but services, businesses itself, everything, titles,
Yes.
shares,
Yes. Everything.
even
Like they said,
possibly
everything. Crazy.
everything. Yeah, I know, and that's crazy, right? And that's why it's going to be so big because you're going to need cryptocurrency to move those assets.
Yes. Yes. But
That's the big thing.
you know, if we look at it, back when I think I was only about two when they changed to from pounds sterling to dollars and things like that for New Zealand, and we all had to adapt to a change. And we're all going to now have to adapt to another change. And really, I think my message to everyone on the call is be knowledgeable about the change so that you make good decisions.
Totally agree. Hey,
Yeah.
we've got a couple of questions on a question on the chat, which two people want to
Okay.
know is, does your wisdom technique for trust, etc., work in New Zealand as well? Have you tested it here with other clients? If so, where do we go for more info?
Okay. Yes, I have helped several New Zealanders set up, and it is usable anywhere in the world. But private is private anywhere in the world, and the only thing that would alter would be, for instance, when I do an unincorporated association that sits in the private, I make sure that it's as close to what the legislation, if we were in the public, would require. But we're actually over in the private. But why I do that is simply because if some of my people unknowingly get pulled into the public, I want them to be able to meet the legislative requirements over there and not get into trouble. Because if they get pulled across, it means they've already broken the trust and the privacy. But private is private anywhere and everywhere. And you can what I'll do if you want to find out more is I can actually I'll send it to Tony. I'll send a link. I have my next I was going to put it in the chat, but I haven't got it handy. I'll send Tony a link to my next workshop, which is on Monday. although it's at 8 p.m., which isn't Australian, which isn't good for you. But you can contact me, and Tony, if you could pop my details perhaps into your group, into the crypto
Sure.
group.
We'd love to do that. And by the way, the sharing of this video will not be sent publicly.
Okay, thank you.
It will only be for our own private group.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. It's okay though, because most of what I spoke on today was more aimed for your group about the crypto.
Yep.
What I deal in the private with is all of the private trusts and the unincorporated associations and the membership associations. So yeah, so just harking back to that, some of the legislation for each country is different. I had quite a big job to do for a lady who lives down Napier Way, and she had 5 houses and Maori land titles and assets as well. And I had to really research to make sure that I was doing what was right for her according to New Zealand law, because I didn't want her to get caught out if, as I say, if you get pulled into the public and have to talk. But I actually write clauses into all my documents that protect you as the trustee or the facilitator or the principal from having to disclose anything. And yeah, and there are bonds that are required to be lodged and forfeited prior to you disclosing. And you know who like the IRD or the council, who's going to want to lodge and forfeit a bond to you in order to get the information, especially when it's a big bond, because you can set that bond at whatever amount you want. So there's protective clauses in there that keep people safe, but they've got to know how to use them.
Yeah, I think there'll be a lot of good interest in what you're proposing there, as especially to the wider group. There's a lot of people that haven't made it today, and you know, I think there would be some interest there for sure. So,
Okay.
also,
Well, on that note, sorry to interrupt you, Tony, but on that note, if you find that there's several people in your group, you could do a workshop and just have it for your group. And I'm happy to do it at a different time that would suit you.
okay, that would be so cool because you're in Queensland, aren't you?
Yes, I am. So at
So
the
you're
moment,
3 hours.
3 hours.
3 hours.
Yeah,
But daylight savings ending in a week, so it'll only be 2 hours soon.
yeah, makes it
But
easier.
we'll keep in touch on that, because I know there'll be, and I'm in a common law group. So when it comes to common law, is this basically we don't need to become the living man or woman? Your trust or your unincorporated society could basically protect us, or should we still become,
The living
completely?
man and woman. And okay, I'm actually helping a group out at the moment who do all of that. But with my trust, no, you can just come in as Raewyn Wise, and I want to have a trust in the public. If I have a business that requires statutory licenses and things, or like our Wisdom is an unincorporated association with the bank. That's how I listed it with the bank, because they require less documents and you don't have to disclose as much to the bank. But it is actually trust. Unincorporated associations and trusts are very similar in a lot of ways. And so yes, sorry, where were we going with that? Yes, you can just be yourself, and you put your assets, whatever they might be, whatever you want to protect in there. Or if you've got a group and you wanted to have a members association, you have the aligned intent and you have a membership agreement, and and you just have all the protective measures in the documentation, and that is the law, LAW, of the trust or the association. So the other laws, the legal stuff, is all contractual
So,
law wins. It's a
so
higher.
Well, so the trusts that we've got, like my partner manages a couple of trusts, so now properties in the trust and all that. Is that still in their jurisdiction? Those trusts are not, they're not really protecting us.
Well, they probably do give you a level of protection. Do you have to do tax returns at the end of the year?
Yeah,
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 so
yeah,
you're in the public with them. I'm
yeah.
talking about moving across into the private, so that things are private.
Right.
There's no
Well, I'm
there's no responsibility of the trustee, principal, or whatever you want to call for yourself, facilitator or director, to tell the IRD or the ATO anything. That you don't have to report to anyone when you're in the private.
That's so awesome. So would you be able to help us to move from the public public trust to your private trust? Is it a
Absolutely, that's
mission?
what I do. That's my work.
Oh,
That's what I
wow.
do.
That is
Yeah.
so amazing. I would love you to meet my partner because she handles all that, but it worries her a lot.
Oh, and so, rightly so, especially with all the changes that are going on in the world.
Oh, I know. It's doing her head in.
What are
So
the
that's
repercussions?
been so helpful and so wonderful. I really enjoyed. I think I can see that there's definitely some interest here. So maybe we could do a workshop for if you could do a workshop for our group. I think you get quite a lot more people because
Okay.
there's a lot of people interested in the whole protection on that level, the
Oh,
common law stuff,
yeah, yeah.
and
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 look, I agree. People are looking for the protection. They're a bit confused about what to do and how to do it. And there's the other way that you mentioned about the living trusts and secured party creditors and all that sort of thing, which I don't pretend to know or understand properly. As I say, I'm just working with a group, but I'm working with them to help them with unincorporated associations and then trusts for their that's how I pronounce it, trusts when they get to that.
also,
So, it depends on your belief system as well. Do we go down that track, or, is the QFS here? Is it really rolled out? Is it really happening? You know, it just depends on what you think is going to happen and how much protection you want to give yourself.
yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Raewyn. It's been very generous with your time, and I know everyone's stuck to the end, so it's obviously everyone's enjoyed it. I can tell.
Thank you very
So,
much. I
yeah,
really
awesome.
appreciate that. And thank you for having invited me. And I hope that everyone found the crypto information and the DAOs and everything interesting, because there's so much information out there, and people who are experts in it talk like in all these acronyms and things, and you just think, what? Slow down. What does that word mean? What's that stand for? And so you miss what they're actually saying because you're so busy trying to understand one acronym, that it gets difficult. And I don't talk at that level, so
Yeah,
it's pretty
I
handy.
know what you mean. The languaging can be it's like learning another language,
Oh,
literally.
oh, it is. Mm, it is.
Um, yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, we'll stay in touch, and I'll keep the community informed of what
Okay,
we.
righto. Well, I shall shoot you through my link. Actually, no, I'll shoot you through a message,
Okay,
and we'll sort out a time for your group to have a workshop.
perfect. Well, I'm really keen. I'm
Great,
keen myself. Yeah,
super.
cool. Awesome.
Okay, and thank you everyone again. I appreciate you having come and listened.
Yeah. Thanks, Raewyn. All right. Bye now.
Bye.
See you, everyone.